Okay, model railway fans, it's time to take a look at the Epping Model Railway Club Queen's Birthday Long Weekend Model Railway Exhibition. This is the 2015 exhibition, and it was a little bit of a strange one because there was a bit of a vacuum of model railway displays. There's always a fantastic second-hand area, and I've picked up some amazing things there over the years, and my children love to come to this because they have a really good kids scenery clinic. And this video will be split into a couple of videos because I've got a lot of video to show, and really long videos sadly don't work on YouTube. I'll do a little synopsis of each display that we take a look at, and I may also talk about some of the problems that are plaguing the model railway exhibition world. I'll apologise now for any mistakes I make along the way. Okay, let's do it. Okay, first up is a layout called Traintasia. What happens if you mix G-scale trains and a children's fantasy? Well, you get a layout called Traintasia. This magical large-scale railway by Keith King is an ever-popular exhibit. Considering its G-scale, it loops around in a fairly compact area. Just about every Disney character developed is on this multi-layered layout that mysteriously changes trains after each pass. I have seen this train layout many times over and it never disappoints. And most importantly, this layout is set at a child-friendly level. You don't need to climb on anything to enjoy this amazing railway. Okay, next layout's a strange one. It's for sale. It's called UNTEN IM TAL. Translated means down in the valley apparently. It's a strange scale. It's TT scale, which has a track gauge of 12mm. It's basically halfway between N scale and HO scale. This layout represents a tri-border area of Poland, Czechoslovakia and old East Germany. But sadly, as beautiful as this is, it's got a large standoff. You can't get near this display. There's also perspex that distracts from the display, and I think my son got bored of looking at this within a very short time. If you're displaying this smaller scale types of trains, you really need to allow the public to get closer. You've got perspex protection there. Really, unless you're giving out binoculars, there's no point in displaying this. You can't appreciate it if there's a big standoff. This Epping Model Railway Club Queen's Birthday Long Weekend Train Exhibition has a lot of traders there in the hall, but it's infamous for the second-hand stall. And the trick to the second-hand stall is to get there first thing on the Saturday when this exhibition opens over the long weekend. Grab your old BOAC flight bag and get ready to stash it full of your favourite old train stuff. The things I go for there is of course Thomas & Friends toys. I found some amazing ERTL toy trains there over the years. But I also look out for the old Tri-ang Hornby gear. That's the stuff from when I was a child, and if I see something there that I like, you know what, I'm going to buy it. And I've always found the prices to be very reasonable and well below what you'll see people trying to flog the stuff online for. Okay, next layout is called Buffalo Junction. This is a fictitious N-scale layout located somewhere in the USA. It looks like Oregon to me. The layout measures 1,200mm by 900mm. Well, might as well call that a metre by a metre. And it's a demonstration of what can be done in a very limited space. I dare say this is a great illustration of the glory of N-scale. N-scale is tiny scale, but if it's done to high detail standards, it can be extremely impressive. Don't write it off just because it's small. As always, the devil is in the detail. The next thing we'll take a look at, and I think it was one of the really good things at the exhibition, was the modelling clinic. This is where you can watch someone dirty down and detail a model train to make it look super realistic. Now I can tell you my son was fascinated by watching this. There was layerings of powders and coloured pencils, and isopropyl alcohol was being sprayed, and it was a process of basically putting things on and then rubbing it down and blowing stuff off, and it was an accumulation of all these different colours that made this look incredibly real. What was really good was the gentleman who was doing this was explaining his method and why he does things in a certain process. There was definitely things that you do first, second, third, fourth, fifth in getting the train to look down and dirty. There was also a picture there of what he was aiming for, but this is one of these things where it's his perception of how dirty this train is. You're going to have some people who are going to say, oh, but that's too dirty, and other people will say, oh, that's not dirty enough. It really is a thing between the person doing it, what they enjoy seeing, and the way they interpret what they can see from the photo that they've got. Personally, I'm more for the more heavy-handed approach when it comes to dirtying stuff up, because if you go and look at the real world and real trains, they're usually pretty messed up. And it's one of those things that if you see a train up close, you'll notice this even more so. If you see trains off at a distance, you just don't notice how dirty they can be. But I'm sure there are many people who watch my videos on YouTube and have possibly done this process, and they probably have their own ways of dirtying down trains. It's one of those things, you know, there's probably 1,000 ways to do this, but what I saw being demonstrated here was really, really nice. Well, the next layout, my son got busted for getting too close, but hey, he wanted to get close because it's only N scale, and N scale is tiny. This layout was called Gopher Bits, and I'm reading here, Phil Badger has been hard at work creating various models for the increasingly popular N-scale prototype. Now I've got a feeling that this beautiful little display here was also a bit of a trader's stall as well, so obviously you go and see Phil Badger at Gopher Bits to get your bits to make little tiny things like this. So there you go, Gopher Models, there's a free plug and it didn't cost you a cent.
It's a train set made of cheese.
It's a train set made of cheese, yeah. Well, the next layout was a very strange one. It was sort of stuck between two other layouts. I think they were just trying to fill gaps if anything. But this strange layout that's only partially built was my son's favourite layout at the show, and he called it Thomas Cheese. I think this is N scale. It's on one of those fold-up tables, and there's not very much going on at all, but somehow this was the favourite thing that my son saw at this train show. And what helps is it's at the right height. You can get up as close as you want to it, and it's got a pretty awesome small-scale Thomas the Tank pulling Annie and Clarabel. Model railway exhibitions are amazing, but they're only amazing if you can see the model trains that are on exhibit. Here's my son's point of view of one of the exhibits at this show. He can't see a thing. The only way he can see something is by breaking the law and standing on a chair to see the trains. I know display heights is a hot topic with model railway exhibitors, but something needs to be done. If you keep exhibiting stuff which is set so high, you've only got yourselves to blame if the hobby dies. I'd like to split the video here before we go into part 2, but I will finish off with a vlog and pick up on something that I read in a magazine related to model railways. Oh, I don't like doing vlogs. You know why? Because I'm not very good at them. But I've got a few things to say about the direction that model railways and model railway clubs seem to be going. And it's a sort of funny thing. I think they need to catch up with what's going on today. You know, I go to a couple of train shows. Of course, I used to take my daughter along. Now I take my son. My daughter lost interest in them. She's a bit too old for them now. But my son is quite eager about them, and from seeing what my son keys into when he goes to train shows gives me an inkling of what would be the good things to show. As strange as this sounds, the one display that he liked the most was that Thomas Cheese one that we've already seen in this part of the Epping Model Railway. And you're sort of thinking, well, that's strange, Leo, because that was just an underdeveloped layout with a small-scale Thomas running about, but for some reason that mesmerised him. That's the strange thing about children. What they like is so different to what older people like. And I think that people who are displaying railways have got to sort of future think and protect themselves and display things that children of today are quite interested in. You don't have to rely on Thomas the Tank or whatever is a popular train getting about at the moment. I think what is lacking at a lot of these train shows is seeing good Lego trains displays, seeing good, like let's say a good Tomy toy layout of toy trains without saying the word Thomas the Tank. You don't need to have Thomas the Tank in there to make an excellent toy train layout. And I remember back, I think it was 2012, at the St. Luke's Model Railway exhibition, that is the closest one to my home, there were some children there who had a Lego layout. I think it was called Johnston or Jonestown. It was based on the boy's name and his little layout, like his little town. It was like a rescue sort of scenario where they had fires, or fake fires, because they had a smoke machine. They had, the train came around, they did a little rescue, like a little show in a sense. But it was what they enjoyed to do, and there was a lot of interest around seeing that performance, which was also a layout, which was also a Lego train set, and it's all awesome because it's big scale. What was really nice of that was they had a camera inside the train, so you could also see the point of view of the train going around the layout. Now, rarely do I ever see that happening in layouts that I go and look at. I'm just reaching into my pocket here to get the thing that I know that everyone carries around with them these days. We all carry this thing around with us these days. This is the very common thing that all mumsies and dadsies have, and some children as well. It would be so easy these days to put a little camera that feeds out a Wi-Fi signal to these things here. I know all my GoPros do it, and just leave the thing there so people can dial in and get a bit of a different perspective of the layouts. I think you've got to do your layout shows and have technology keyed into them. If you're not doing this, you're going to lose out, because I think people are expecting that next level of excitement when they go to train shows. It's sort of weird because people who do train exhibitions, they're sort of train geeks. They like all the technology and all the fact that it's DCC and they can control everything with push button, these wonderful push button arrays, and the signaling's done and all the switches and everything's amazing. The trains make all the right sounds now. That part of the hobby, yes, that's great. That's sort of been the more recent developments, but what they need to do is work out how to use technology to entertain those who come to train shows. And I'm saying all this because I've been reading Australian Model Railway magazine. I've been reading a couple of issues of this, and what happens is you'll read more details about some of those big displays that get seen, like at the Epping Model Railway Club, and you get more of an insight into what's going on. But there was one article in here that was quite curious, and I've got to put my granny glasses on so I can read here. I'm not going to read all the article, I'm just going to read a small section of it. It was by Bob Gallagher, excuse me, and it's titled The Aging Faces. Well, apart from this being the aging face, sadly the model railway fraternity has trouble attracting younger folk. And I mean, you can see that by when you go to these train shows. Rarely do you see younger people running the shows. And it talks about back in the 70s, club committees were made up of a few old heads, but the majority of members were people in their 30s and 40s. And the problem here is that when you look at the clubs these days and the people who are exhibiting, you're not seeing the younger folk. I think what's going on today is that we're all, even though we've got all this smart technology around us and we've got, things that are meant to make our lives easy, we actually have busier lives now. We're all time poor. It would take a big effort to actually exhibit a model railway exhibit at a train show. I know there are many, many, many people who have these incredible setups at home and they never exhibit. Okay, there's probably a very small percentage of people who actually take their stuff and exhibit it at train shows. And it's sort of weird because I'm thinking, wow, what would be easy for me to do to show my big Thomas the Tank collection via a video that I make and I just pop up online, or do I drag the whole thing out to a train show to actually do a performance and see, so everyone can see it for real? Straight away, I'm thinking, I know what the easiest solution there is. The online solution is easy, and I think a lot of people see it like that. And I'll read a little bit further down into this thing here because it talks about the importance of clubs. It says clubs run exhibitions, provide a means of contact and something that the web cannot replace. And when I sort of read that, I sort of felt like there was this sort of thing they're saying, well, yeah, we're a train club and we're doing stuff that can't be replicated on the web. And I think they've got a fear of what's going on the web. I think the train shows have got to embrace what's going on the web. If you don't have your own YouTube channel going on or major social network connections, then there's a problem. I think you have to be connected that way. My biggest fear is one day I'll rock up at these train shows and there'll be like a big sign, no YouTube videos, or go away Leo sign, because we want to just have our show to ourselves for the paying patrons who come along. I've delayed this upload by nearly a year. The 2016 show, by the time you see this video, will probably be just about on us. And the 2015 show, which is the one we've just looked at partially, it was actually one of the smaller exhibits that I've seen at the Brick Pit. I heard a bit of leaky news out the back of the club, and the problem was they had a whole bunch of smaller scale layouts. The problem with small scale layouts is they don't take up much real estate. And like I sort of said at the beginning of this vlog, if you fill up your show with more kid-friendly stuff, more toy trainy sort of stuff, there's nothing wrong with putting up trains or toy trains as a display if it's set up correctly. I mean, even if you just have a whole bunch of wooden railway that kids can go and mingle and play with, and sure, there'll be a few bits and bobs stolen along the way, but it's, hey, part of the deal, isn't it? Look at the way, if you go to Hobbyco in town, okay, in Sydney, they have like a permanently set up wooden railway there, and there's always things going missing from that. But the children will stand there. My son and my daughter have stood there for almost like an hour, and they will endlessly play with the trains there, and they just say, oh, you know, can we go back to Hobbyco because there's that wonderful wooden railway set up? It's sort of that simple sometimes to entice children to come back and get them interested. It is a very curious time for model railway clubs and especially exhibitions. It is sort of a bit of a dying thing. You know, you look at these exhibits, it looks like things from a bygone era. A lot of the exhibitors are hooked on the steamies to diesel transition time, because that was the time when they were kids and they witnessed this go on. So what's closest to their heart or their emotional connection to trains is that transition period. For me, the emotional connection is when I see a layout with the red rattlers, the Sydney trains from the 70s. Straight away I think, wow, I can relate to that. I feel like I'm a little child going to school again, and I'm operating the doors and riding in between the carriages like we weren't meant to. I think the other thing at these exhibitions is they've got to get away from those exhibits which are like towering up really high. That is just turning people off. I think you've got to start to realise that if you don't have everything down at a respectable height where at least everyone's got a chance of seeing it, well, it's going to be all over Red Rover. To explain the reason about chairs, you can't have chairs around with children standing on it because of OH&S laws. The safety aspects of that have basically pulled having chairs around. That chairs used to be around that children stood on to be able to see the very high adult eye level displays. But I think the days of displaying at those heights, they've got to be over. And I know that is a very hot topic amongst the model railway fraternity. I see it on the forums online. But I think I've covered what I want to say here. You know, if you're probably going to say, well, Leo, what would you do if I was going to do a display to impress younger people and have them think, wow, let's go back next year and take a look at that display? I'd pick off a current thing. I'd actually make a Minecraft themed display, and I'd have it all in blocks in a sense. And I would have it as a Minecraft train, and people would just go like, wow, it'd be so different to everything else. Okay, it would key into what children are into, and I think that's the way you got to do it. I mean, Lego did Minecraft fairly well, and it was almost the perfect marriage made in, you know, game versus toy. The people doing model railways have got to start to think about what impresses younger folk. When I upload videos onto YouTube, I've got to think very carefully what impresses younger folk. I'm not uploading videos to impress people my age, put it that way. I used to try to do that, and that's YouTube suicide. The way the model railway clubs and the exhibitions have got to run, they've got to be a little bit more focused on younger folk. And in a strange way, if you invite younger folk to do that, to have their displays there, they quite often will come along and they will run trains in a very different way. My son loves to see trains getting crashed. The younger folk will run their layouts in a more risky environment, in the sense they'll have trains really close to each other, they'll have accidents set up, and they'll do things that the older folk are replicating like real timetables and trying to be like real trains. To younger people, that's actually very boring. Okay, so if you sort of key into what younger people enjoy, I think that's going to be the saviour of your exhibitions and possibly your model clubs. But I'll leave this video here. I hope what I've said makes sense, because I don't vlog very often. Please have your say. Maybe you think I'm totally wrong. Please leave a comment on this video what your thoughts are about how to improve model railway exhibitions. Your say is always more important than what I have to say. Better leave this video here. Look out for part 2, which has the amazing Jeff Knott display Smuggler's Cove. Completely stunning, and probably a totally priceless display as well. It was worth the admission fee to the Epping Model Railway Club just to see that piece of art. Okay, thanks for watching and bye for now.